This is going to be a really beginner-friendly rotation guide for patch 11.0.5 for an arms warrior. We will be taking the Slayer hero talents in both the single target and AoE or Raid and Mythic Plus rotations that we will be looking at here. As I said, this is very beginner friendly. If you are new here, hello, my name is Javier. I cover every spec in the game, making it accessible and easy to learn for you every single season. So please click that subscribe button if this video is helpful to you. We're going to be starting off here at the left, which is the top priority, going down to our lowest priority. And we are starting off with single target. We will then look at some important talents and see how the build comes together, and then move on to changes we're making in the Mythic Plus and area of effect rotation and utilities, etc. So, first things first. I did already mention we are starting with the Slayer hero talents. It doesn't actually give us any new abilities to use, which is nice. It means it's not going to get any more complex. So let's go into combat and see how and what we're going to use. So the first and top priority is to use this ability here, Rend. You can see that it uses 20 Rage. What is Rage? Well, on this weak aura in the center of my screen here, can you see as every time I attack, we're building up this red bar? That is your Rage. You're going to be building Rage with your auto attacks and some of your abilities, and then spending it on our abilities like Rend. So that's our main resource as a warrior. You can also see this little icon here is grayed out. This is actually this buff here, Battle Shout. You should be using this before you go into combat. It increases the attack power of all raid and party members by 5%. So we're going to put on Rend on our target, and we're going to keep this up at all times. This is going to cause some instant damage, but also a dot of bleed damage on the target. What is a dot? Damage over time. You may hear this acronym a lot. Dots or HOTS, heal over time spells, damage over time spells. That's what it means, and that is our top priority. You want to refresh this just before it comes off. So if there's a second or two remaining on it, refresh it on the target. Then we're going to use some of our cooldowns. Thunderous Roar, roaring explosively, dealing physical damage to enemies within 12 yards, and again causing them to bleed. Immediately after that, we're going to use Avatar. Now, Thunderous Roar and Colossus Smash here are on a 45-second cooldown, and Avatar is on a 1.5-minute cooldown. One thing I want to mention is that you should always use your Colossus Smash with your Avatar. So for every 2 Colossus Smashes, you can use 1 Avatar. So try and line those up whenever you can to use Avatar directly before Colossus Smash. Avatar transforms you into Colossus, causing you to deal more damage and generates a little bit of rage. Basically, before we get into the actual rotation, of course, you want to be doing more damage and hence using Avatar. So we use Avatar, and then we immediately use Colossus Smash. Smashes the enemy's armor, dealing damage and again increasing damage we deal to them by 30%. So both of these together will greatly increase how much damage we're doing. After that, we actually have our Execute ability. And you can see here that we can't actually use it. And that is because we can only use it on enemies that have less than 35% health. So why is it so high on the rotation? Well, we can actually use it with certain talents that will be affected by it, or affected to it, I should say. The main one here being Sudden Death. Your attacks have a chance to make your next execute cost no rage and be usable on a target with any health, and you deal damage as if you spent 40 rage. In other words, we're going to be dealing the maximum amount of damage on our execute there. So whenever you see your execute light up and is usable at any level of health, do try and use it here in the rotation. There's also this talent here, Juggernaut. Execute increases Execute's damage dealt by 3% for 12 seconds, and that can stack up to 15 times. So just be aware that there is also that damage that we're going to be getting when we use our Execute from that talent as well. After that, we're going to use our Blade Storm. We generally want to use this again during our Colossus Smash window. So while we're in that Avatar Colossus Smash window, or just Colossus Smash of extra damage, we want to use Blade Storm. It is also on a 1.5-minute cooldown, meaning again, there'll be one Colossus Smash in the middle, and then one that you can use with Avatar and Blade Storm with your Colossus Smash. Hopefully that makes sense in what I'm saying about the cooldown times. Become an unstoppable storm of destructive force, striking all enemies, around you. After that, we want to use Overpower. Overpower the enemy, dealing damage. Cannot be blocked, dodged, or parried. Again, increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike, and that can stack twice. This one here is Mortal Strike. More on that in a second. We only are using Overpower here at this point if we have a proc from this spell here, or this talent, should I say, Opportunist. When Overpower has its cooldown reset by Tactician, your next Overpower deals more damage and 20% additional crit damage. So basically, all you need to worry about is the fact that sometimes you'll get a little ribbon around here and it will proc from that talent. Whenever it does, whenever Overpower lights up, use it at this point in the priority list. And this isn't a rotation where we're going right to left to right. This is a priority list, meaning this is your top priority. Oh, and here we go. Look, there you go. You just saw it then. That is the proc we are looking for. So yes, it's and there's a proc on sudden death for your execute as well. You can see we can use execute there. So this is a priority, meaning this is top priority, this is bottom priority. You can see the stacks on my weak aura of our execute and our juggernaut that we have here. And again, you can see the sudden death proc, so we know we can use our execute. After that, we're going to use our Mortal Strike. Then we're going to use... Oh, and I didn't explain what Mortal Strike does. Basically, it does damage and reduces the effectiveness of any healing on the target. After that, we can use Skull Splitter. Bash an enemy skull in. Lovely, isn't it? Skull Splitter causes your rend, which is this. This is rend, okay? The bleed we're putting up on them, to bleed out 100% faster. And therefore, it's doing damage a lot quicker. After that, we're going to use Overpower. And this is whether it has a proc or not, okay? We're just using it, whatever the case may be at this point. And if you've got any spare button presses, we're going to use Slam, which just does some damage. So let's just go through that one more time. We're going to keep Rend up on our target at all time. Thunderous Roar on cooldown. Avatar with our Colossus Smash. Execute whenever we get a proc. We're going to use Blade Storm in the Colossus Smash window. Whenever we get a proc of Overpower, we're going to use it. After using Overpower, we're going to use our Mortal Strike. There we go. Use Skull Splitter pretty much on cooldown. Any remaining stacks or that you have of Overpower, we're going to use. And then as a filler, we're going to be using our Slam. And as you can see here, you do actually end up at this point in the rotation quite a lot here, as there is nothing else to actually press basically in the rotation. And it works out, as you can see, really, really nicely. We're making sure we're refreshing that rend, using any execute procs, using any overpower procs, and then using Mortal Strike. Again, any execute procs, and using our Blade Storm, and using Slam, etc. as a filler. And there you go, guys. That is the single target rotation. Let's just now move over to the AoE, so multiple target and Mythic Plus rotation. There is a few changes here that I want to make you aware of. But it's generally the same rotation. It's just, it looks a lot different, but it's not. You're just adding a few things in to make multi-target easier. So, we're not using Rend at all. We're using Thunderclap. That is because it blasts all enemies within 8 yards, deals damage to them, and also will apply Rend. So this is actually going to apply Rend, as you can see here, to all nearby targets. Hence, Thunderclap is a replacement for Rend, but in reality, it's just a big AoE Rend. Then we're going to use Sweeping Strikes. For 15 seconds, your single target damaging abilities hit an additional target for 75% of the damage. This makes perfect sense why we'd want to use it ASAP, because of course our single target damaging abilities will affect 2 targets rather than 1. So we use that. Same again, we use Thunderous Roar and Avatar. Then we're going to use Skull Splitter, and then we're going to use Colossus Smash in that order. You want to make sure that you're pairing up your Skull Splitter with your Sweeping Strikes so that it does hit an additional target and make the Rend bleed happen faster. Colossus Smash on cooldown. We then have Cleave. You want to just use this pretty much on cooldown. Strikes all enemies in front of you, inflicting deep wounds. Cleave will consume your overpower effect to deal increased damage. Deep wounds is this on the target. They're bleeding and suffering from increased damage from us. So Cleave helps us do that. Again, we're going to be using Overpower. At this point, you can pretty much just use it here if it's in your sweeping strikes window. So in the single targets hitting more than one target window, use it here. And then after that, we can use our Blade Storm. Blade Storm is AoE, so you don't need to worry about only using it in Colossus Smash. Although it's ideally that you do, it doesn't matter as much because it's hitting AoE targets anyway. Again, use Execute whenever you're getting a proc with it. Mortal Strike, again, try and use this during your sweeping strikes. Then we have Overpower, use any remaining stacks that you have of this. And if you've got nothing else to press, it would be Thunderclap as well. So basically, Thunderclap to keep rend up, use your sweeping strikes, use your cooldowns, and use Skull Splitter within your sweeping strikes. Use Colossus Smash on cooldown, same with Cleave. Overpower, Blade Storm, and then after that, it's going to be any procs we get on our Execute, as you can see here. Again, make sure you are keeping up your rend. Cleave, Overpower, Mortal Strike, Overpower remaining ones, and then again you can see it's coming off. You're going to reapply rend, and you can see it's a pretty straightforward rotation here. One thing I would advise to not do is click the buttons like you're actually seeing in this tutorial. Sometimes I do get people watching this video who think that's how I play, and I'm not. If you want to play like that, that's absolutely fine. But what you really should be doing is key binding them like this down here, because if you do that, you will be able to press these a lot quicker and do a lot more DPS. So just when you're watching this video, I don't want you to pick up bad habits off of how the video is presented. I'm only clicking these to show you this is how we do it. I don't even have these action bars, obviously, normally here for the tutorial, just to make sure that everyone understands that. Because I don't want you picking up bad habits. Let's talk through some of the important talents that we've got to see how the rotation again comes together. So there's a lot actually weaves into each other here that you may not be aware of. Martial Prowess here. Overpower increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike or Cleave by 30%. That can stack twice. One thing to note is Bloodletting. If you have Rend, which we do, Mortal Strike will actually inflict Rend on targets below 35% health. We don't need to worry about that too much in the AoE rotation because we're applying it with Thunderclap anyway, but just as an FYI. Overpower will also actually do AoE damage. Causes a seismic wave, dealing damage to all enemies within a 10-yard line. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So Overpower will actually hit multiple targets in this rotation. There's Anger Management. Every 20 rage you spend on attacks reduces the remaining cooldown on Colossus Smash, Blade Storm, and Ravager. So earlier I'm talking about lining these up. It'll be even easier because Colossus Smash will have its cooldown reduced. There's also Unhinged. Every other time you Blade Storm, so every second time, you automatically cast a Mortal Strike at your target or random nearby enemy. Again, it's happening passively, but I think it's good to know. Cleave will also do 50% increased damage after Blade Storm ends. And if Cleave or Whirlwind we're not using, but if Cleave hits 2 or more targets, you also slam your primary target as well, so doing a bit of extra damage there. That's all of the talents that I want to talk through in the Mythic Plus rotation. Going back to the single target one, there's not much that's changing. We're getting these ones on Execute here and Sudden Death. Let's talk around the hero talents quickly, however. So what do they actually do? Well, the main one we get is Slayer's Dominance. Your attacks against your primary target have a high chance to overwhelm them and trigger a Slayer's Strike, dealing damage and applying Mark for execution, increasing the damage they take from your next Execute by 15%. And this can stack up to 3 times. When this is stacking, if you have 3 stacks, you do want to, of course, use your Execute. However, if you're using it like I've told you with the Sudden Death procs, this is generally going to be happening anyway in the rotation. Every 3 Slayer strikes will also give you Sudden Death, again giving you a free Execute to use. Those Sudden Deaths will also heal you. Mark for execution increases the critical strike, etc. of your next execute. Again, it's happening passively. There's Overwhelming Blades. Each strike of Blade Storm applies Overwhelmed to all enemies affected, increasing damage we deal to them by a percentage, and it can stack 10 times, so up to 10% more damage. So if you are wondering why are we using Blade Storm in single target, this is one of the reasons why. Your next Mortal Strike after Blade Storm ends also deals 50% more damage. Mortal Strike and Cleave have a chance to cause us to do more AoE damage. And then we've got the remaining Keystone talent here, Unrelenting Onslaught. When you execute a target that you've marked for execution, you both reduce the cooldown of Blade Storm and apply stacks of Overwhelm to the target. And you can now use Pummel and Stormbolt while Blade Storming. So if this is starting to overwhelm you with talents, etc., don't worry. Just go back and follow the rotation I've shown you, get used to actually doing the rotation, and then come back and look at the talents and go, right, how does this all actually fit together? Because I'm aware that it can, of course, be a bit overwhelming learning these. A few things that we haven't spoken about is your stance down here. We're going to be in battle stance at all times, not defensive stance. Unless you need to, you can use defensive stance if like something big is going to happen to you directly. It's a defensive combat state that reduces all damage you take by 15%, but also damage you deal. So if you're having to run away because some big amount of damage is coming in, you can go into it. But when we're looking at doing damage, we're always going to be in battle stance. Looking at some other utilities quickly that you may or may not be aware of. Battle Shout, I think we already spoke about. We've got Berserker's Rage, which will make you immune to incapacitate effects, etc. Generally more used in PvP, but still useful. Hamstring is a utility we can use to reduce our target's movement speed. Heroic Leap, we can leap through the air to our target location. Slamming down to do physical damage to enemies, but it's also good from getting from A to B very quickly. We have Impending Victory on a 25-second cooldown, where you cause damage, but it also heals you for 30% of your maximum health, which is useful. Pummel, very important spell. This is your interrupt. This is how you interrupt your enemy's spell casting, which a lot of beginners and even advanced players will actually forget about. It is an insidious oversight how much people don't realize they need to be interrupting, especially in dungeons. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see new players making, is not interrupting spellcasting on their enemies. Rallying Cry, again, can grant you and your party temporary health, which is useful. Shockwave will stun enemies in front of you. What else do we have? There's really quite a lot. There is also Ignore Pain, where you fight through the pain, ignoring 50% of damage taken on 11-second cooldown as well. Hopefully that was useful for you guys. Please do subscribe and leave a thumbs up if it was. I'd also love to hear your thoughts about this class or other classes, etc., that you might enjoy in the comments. If you would like my UI here, this weak aura in the center you can get from Luxfoss. It's the Luxfoss weak aura for warriors. The rest of the UI, the details profile, all the rest of it is completely bespoke and made by me, including plater profiles, details profiles, voodoo, raid frames, and action bars and keybinds, etc. And you can get all of that on my Patreon. As well as that, on the Patreon, you can get one-on-one advice and tips from me through the VIP channel in our Discord, and I can also even help you review your logs and things like that if you are looking to improve. Check out the playlist you now see on screen if you would like to see other specs, as I do them all every single season. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a thumbs up.